Imagine being a kid, right? But instead of learning math or playing outside, you're taught to speak fluent French, Arabic, and English. Imagine being trained to handle pretty much every weapon in existence, mastering the absolute brutal art of espionage before you even hit adulthood. Now, you might be thinking the hardest part of all that training would be the violence or maybe the insane physical demands. But for Wolfgang Grimmer, who is honestly one of the most fascinating and tragic psychological case studies we're unpacking in today's explainer, the hardest lesson? It wasn't the weapons, it wasn't the languages. It was this. The hardest thing they taught me wasn't weapons or languages, it was how to fake a smile. Just let that sink in for a second. It's a completely chilling reality. We're talking about a 14-year-old child spy, someone who can seamlessly infiltrate foreign countries, eliminate targets without a second thought, and yet he struggles the most with just a basic, everyday facial expression. He could master ballistics in his sleep, but he had to painstakingly learn how to fake joy just to blend in with the people he was sent to monitor. It's an exhausting, deeply heavy psychological burden to carry around, way heavier than just learning how to fight. So, what does this actually look like in practice? Well, it brings us to a deeply disturbing question. How does a man feel absolutely nothing when his own son dies? Think about the sheer weight of that for a moment. Grimmer actually recounted the tragic death of his own child to his friend Dr. Tenma. And he did it completely calmly, wearing that exact same light, unfaltering, painted-on smile. He felt numb, completely blank. His wife, understandably, was absolutely infuriated. She basically told him, look, it's fine if you don't show me any true affection, it's fine if you're never romantic, but your own son dies and you don't even mourn? She couldn't comprehend his absolute numbness. And frankly, neither can most of us. Section 1. The hardest lesson, the fake smile. Okay, let's dive into this. Let's look at the profound psychology behind Grimmer's perpetual grin. Why exactly does he wear this mask? And what is it doing to him on a neurological and even spiritual level? I mean, we all know the fake smile, right? We use it during those incredibly awkward holiday gatherings to appease that one relative, or when we're trying to keep a difficult boss happy at work. It feels like a literal lump in your throat. But scientists observe that a real, genuine smile actively utilizes the muscles around your eyes. A fake smile? It doesn't. A fake smile is essentially you deceiving others while actively betraying yourself. It's a literal form of self-deception. Now imagine living your entire life that way. Every single hour, every single day, masking your true emptiness with a physical exertion of facial muscles. For Grimmer, this constant fake smile wasn't just a social lubricant to get by. It was a tragic, exhausting mechanism for basic survival. Section 2. Kinderheim 511. The Monster Factory. But where does a human being actually learn to completely disconnect from their own emotional core like that? We have to trace it back to its horrifying source. Kinderheim 511. This was a highly secret government project operating under the shadowy, seemingly innocent guise of an orphanage. They took in kids that no one cared about, orphans who had basically just fallen through the cracks of society. But they definitely weren't sheltering them. They were utilizing highly illegal physical and psychological experiments to systematically strip these children of their humanity. The ultimate goal? To completely eradicate human emotion. They wanted to create these perfect, emotionless entities that would just serve a dark, unyielding ideology without a single question. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how they achieved that horrific goal, through the absolute erasure of identity. These children were taken from birth. No names, no personal histories whatsoever. They were entirely stripped of their individuality and just assigned numbers. Imagine being a kid and your only identity is being called number 43 and being ordered to go pour tea. They endured mind-breaking psychological conditioning aimed at the complete erasure of all emotions, personal desires, even their dreams. They were told their aspirations were completely useless. They were conditioned purely for absolute strength and survival. And this brutal, completely inhumane environment is exactly what birthed characters like Johann Liebert, and of course our focus today, Wolfgang Grimmer. The crazy part is, Grimmer wasn't just a participant here. He was a survivor of literally the most extreme procedures this institution had to offer. At just 14 years old, Grimmer survived experimental multiple personality conditioning. The scientists actively tried to artificially manufacture alternative personas within the kids' minds. For the other children, this psychological torture was just way too much. They either died or they tragically took their own lives just to escape it. But Grimmer? The experiments actually succeeded on him. He survived to become a highly effective spy.
But the process entirely destroyed his emotional core. It turned him into something that, on the inside, was no longer truly human. His emotions weren't just suppressed, they were completely, utterly anesthetized.
Let's move to section 3 and see how this builds. Steiner, the needle in the ocean.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark contrast it shows. Human nature absolutely abhors a vacuum. When you suppress a person's true self that deeply, something terrifying, but also strangely protective, grows in the dark. We see this wild Jekyll and Hyde contrast in Grimmer's psyche. On one side, you have the Wolfgang Grimmer persona, the calm, mild-mannered spy, deeply numb, relying entirely on that constant fake smile to just navigate the world. But on the other side, burst directly from those horrific experiments, is the Steiner persona. When Grimmer is pushed to his absolute limit, when he is in extreme, life-threatening danger, Steiner takes over. And Steiner is pure, violent, overwhelming rage. He represents all of those buried feelings violently surfacing all at once. But here is the really crucial detail. Steiner doesn't just destroy. He fights relentlessly to protect the innocent. When the dust finally settles and Grimmer wakes up, the threats are eliminated and the innocent people are safe.
Which brings us to this beautiful yet incredibly tragic metaphor from the source material, a needle in a vast ocean. Through Steiner's righteous protective anger, we learn something really vital. Grimmer's feelings were never truly erased. Kinderheim 511 actually failed to completely destroy his soul. His emotions were just lost. They were like a tiny needle dropped into an endless pitch-black sea of emotional numbness. Sometimes, that needle would just briefly float to the surface through Steiner's rage, even if Grimmer himself had absolutely no idea it was there, simply because the ocean of his trauma was just way too vast to navigate.
Section 4. Finally crying, reclaiming humanity.
This brings us to the narrative climax of our explainer today, the moment where that vast ocean finally recedes and the needle is found. Let's trace this heartbreaking emotional progression together. Step 1. Living as a machine. Grimmer literally formed a family not out of genuine love, but solely as a cover for his spy work. Step 2. Witnessing tragedy without feeling. As we discussed earlier, he loses his own son and feels absolutely nothing, just a terrifying emotional void. But then there were cracks in the ice. In one incredibly powerful scene, he actually manages to talk a child out of taking his own life. And during that moment, tears fell from Grimmer's eyes. Dr. Tenma looked at him in total awe, realizing Grimmer was crying, even though Grimmer himself couldn't even understand his own tears. But step 3 is where his journey concludes, dying and finally crying. In his final moments, after fighting a brutal, exhausting battle to defend the innocent, he sheds true tears. Not confused tears, but tears of profound, agonizing comprehension for his lost son. So the crucial point is this realization. He lived when he died. He was born the moment he could truly mourn. It's a moment of profound tragedy for sure, but it is also one of incredible, undeniable triumph. By finally understanding his grief, by finally crying for his son with full conscious intent, Grimmer defeated the Monster Factory. He proved that they didn't turn him into a robot. In his dying breath, he successfully reclaimed the very humanity they tried so hard to steal from him. Which leaves us with this final, provocative question. Can the human spirit ever truly be erased, or will it always fight to heal itself, even in our final moments? Grimmer dedicated his entire life to fighting the dark legacy of Kinderheim 511. He fought tooth and nail to save children from the exact horrors he endured, and in doing so, his relentless will ultimately healed his own shattered soul. It shows us the absolute, undeniable resilience of the human spirit, a spirit that refuses to stay buried no matter how deep the ocean.